Look, when you can do the things that I can, but you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you.
What if somebody had died tonight? Different story, right? Because that's on you. And if you died, I feel like that's on me.
Stark gave you a multi-billion-dollar AR tactical intelligence system, and the first thing you do with it is try and blow up your friends. It's clear to me that you were not ready for this.
Does anyone else remember when Christopher Marcus, Stephen McFeely, and the Russo brothers were given the opportunity to bring one of Marvel's most beloved characters into the MCU?
Do I need to do that? I know we're on different teams. I just don't want to be disrespectful to you.
Surrender.
Hey, everyone.
I remember being a sophomore in high school and nothing excited me more than watching that trailer. I remember sitting in the theater waiting for the moment that Peter Parker would be introduced to the MCU. And if I'm being honest, the Russos nailed it. In Civil War, we are introduced to a kid dealing with the aftermath of his uncle's death and what that taught him.
He refers to Uncle Ben's death here in a speech in the most subtle way. How long ago did he die? Were they in a house? Did they have to give the house up because of the mortgage? Are they now in this apartment?
Here we feel the weight of Ben's absence, but we never have to see his death to feel that weight. The financial burden, as demonstrated by Peter's need to salvage items from the garbage, is a clear representation of the consequences of Ben's death, as is Peter's understanding of what it means to be responsible.
Look, when you can do the things that I can, but you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you.
He chooses to be a hero in spite of the consequences because he remembers the ultimate consequence to be paid if he doesn't. He becomes Spider-Man so that no one else has to feel the pain that he felt. He ultimately refuses to reveal his identity to anyone, knowing the danger and consequence involved in that as well.
And yeah, I would love to play football, but I couldn't then, so I shouldn't now.
Sure, because you're different.
Peter is hesitant to even go with Tony because of his responsibilities as Peter Parker.
I got homework.
I'm gonna pretend you didn't say that.
In this scene, Peter's maturity is demonstrated through his perspective as someone on the ground, the little guy, a perspective even Tony can empathize with.
Who's going to avenge my son, Stark?
This film gives us a small glimpse into the grounded world of Peter Parker, taking the small amount of allotted time to this character and making the most of it. Here I'm going to borrow a term coined by fellow YouTube essayist Full Fat Videos and say that Peter Parker was Russo'd from his inception in the MCU. In other words, the Russos' handling of the character allowed for what may have been the most interesting and fully realized version of this character within his time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But before I can go on to fully explain this, we must first examine the approach of the second team to handle the character in his first solo outing. Homecoming. To preface this, I do not hate Homecoming, nor do I have any problems with the people behind this film. I very much wish to one day have the amount of skill, talent, and passion these people have as filmmakers. I think that Jon Watts is a genuinely talented filmmaker who made the exact film he set out to make.
I wanted the movie to be fun, you know, and I wanted to, instead of immediately hitting people over the head with the weight and responsibility of what it means to be a superhero, which is a big part of the story, I wanted to start from a place of enthusiasm and excitement and fun.
With that being said, I, as well as many other fans of the character, seem to have felt totally disconnected and removed from that vision. Not because Watts' vision was bad, but because it actually seemed to remove or radically downplay the fundamental characteristics that many were able to connect with in Civil War, and arguably everything that made the Spider-Man that I seem to know and love. I think that conceptually everything about this film should work. The pieces were all there. However, in removing the elements established in Civil War, I personally felt that the Russos gave a sense of weight and responsibility to Peter's life that I couldn't really see or feel in Homecoming. Now let me explain. In Homecoming, I felt as though I was seeing a different Peter. He no longer just respects Tony, he idolizes him, and views him as a superior with a constant referencing of
Mr. Stark, Mr. Stark, Mrs. Stark, Mrs. Stark, Mrs. Stark, thank you.
in such a way that Tony ends up overshadowing the very man who raised Peter and taught him how to be a hero in the first place. The weight of his financial burdens are completely removed, which, why? It would have made perfect sense to have Peter relate more to Toomes than Stark. And lastly, his motivation no longer seems to be about great power and great responsibility. It's about getting the girl and becoming an Avenger. He's constantly trying to prove himself, and rather than thrusting his way into danger because he knows the consequences of what might happen if he doesn't, he does it to prove himself. Not only that, but he contemplates revealing his identity to Liz as to get her to like him.
I would love to play football, but I couldn't then, so I shouldn't now.
Sure, because you're different.
Exactly. But I can't tell anybody that, so I'm not.
Should I tell Liz that I'm Spider-Man?
He skips his Spanish quiz and he's ready to drop out of school.
I got homework.
I'm gonna pretend you didn't say that.
I am so far beyond high school right now.
And even after all that, the greatest consequences he faces are detention, the loss of a suit, which he gets back, and his crush left the school. Therefore, we see that Peter does a lot in this film and messes up a ton, but we never really feel the weight of any of it. Personally, I felt that overall, Civil War provides weight and consequences for events we don't see happen. It made the very grounded real-world problems Peter faces seem apparent and even amplified by his powers. Homecoming provides events for which there are mitigated consequences to keep the film light rather than real, removing any sense of weight and responsibility. Here it feels as though Peter doesn't face any real problems at all, making him feel far less relatable. But just because this wasn't my Peter Parker, doesn't mean he can't be yours. And for those of you who have felt let down by the Marvel Cinematic Universe's version of Spider-Man, I am planning to rewrite each movie in succession on this channel. So if you felt you connected with anything that I had to say, subscribe and stay tuned for more content. Thanks for listening.
You make this? No way. This is amazing. As good as new, right? I'll walk you home. What's your name?
Jorge.
Jorge? I'm Spider-Man.